Hey there, random stranger. I'd like to welcome you to my new potential series called Mario Media Marathon. I say potential because, I'm very small at the moment, so just consider this like the pilot episode. So I've been thinking to myself recently, with the impending release of the Illumination Mario movie, what would be a better time than now to go over the iconic plumber's history by playing, reviewing, and maybe even eventually ranking every piece of media that he started. Or at least every piece of media that I can feasibly get my hands on. I only really have one rule for this series, and that's if this video does well. That being, any game that features a Mario character, but not Mario himself, will be covered. So, the Luigi's Mansion games, for example, the Yoshi games, Wario games, Donkey Kong games, and Super Princess Peach, we'll get videos on them. Now with that explanation out of the way, let's go! That's as good as that impression's gonna get, by the way. Now let's step back a bit to the year of our Lord, 1981. It was a grand old time. Indiana Jones was released, Princess Diana got married, and a bunch of people got AIDS, and a little-known company called Nintendo was about to hit it big. Now, I'm willing to guess you know Nintendo's history, but in case you don't, here's a brief history lesson. They started making cards, then they went through a couple other business ventures like taxis, vacuums, sex hotels, before they finally settled on making toys, one of which was the Ultra Hand, which, fun fact, in 2009, got its own Club Nintendo exclusive Wii game, which has one of the best video game trailers I've ever seen. Oh, you think I'm being hyperbolic? Watch.
How has Grill Off with Ultra Hand changed your life? Wonderful.
Truly, these guys walked so Devolver Digital could run. But going back to Nintendo's history, by the 70s, they had dipped their toes in the video game market by releasing Pong consoles. Like, literally everyone else at the time. Seriously, there were hundreds of these things. Oh, they also made Sheriff, a game people most know from Smash Brothers, for the assist trophy, that, I swear, wipes the floor with me every single time it spawns in. But then, one day, a young, aspiring game designer by the name of Shigeru Miyamoto had a vision for a game that would change the trajectory of Nintendo forever. So he went confidently to the higher-ups at the company and said, "Hey, can we make a Popeye game or something?"
Miyamoto-san, we don't even have the license for the Poppy brand.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Okay, well, how about this? Instead of Popeye, we have Mustache Man in overalls. And instead of Bluto, we have Big Ape.
Miyamoto-san, want that cause lawsuit that will ultimately just result in the creation of another one of our flagship characters?
You're goddamn right it will.
Miyamoto-san, you have officially lost your mind. Here's 39 million yen.
And thus, with the help of Gunpei Yokoi, the guy who invented the Ultra Hand, see, that little tangent from earlier was relevant? Oh yeah, and he also created the Game & Watch, and would later go on to create Metroid and Kid Icarus, but come on, that's not as impressive. Donkey Kong was brought to arcades in 1981. Now, the reason he's called Donkey Kong has been debated, but it's been said that Donkey represents him being stupid or lowly, even though Donkey Kong has the decency to wear clothes, but King Kong parades around naked. So who's the real stupid one here? So, really, it's because he has a giant. As to the surprise of, everyone, Donkey Kong was a huge success. But does it still hold up? Well, let's find out. Oh yeah, really quick disclaimer before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this video. So, I'm very much new to recording gameplay footage, and I've been having some issues with the software and hardware I've been using, like my Elgato HD60S Plus capture card. When I plug it in and open up 4K recording software, which is what it uses, it cuts off the TV, so nothing shows up, and so I decided to record on OBS, and when I did, and that works, but the frame rate is really low, and the audio and sound effects are off from the out, it's out of sync from the footage. So if anyone knows any solutions to these problems I have, please leave them in the comments or shoot me a DM on Discord or Twitter. Thank you. Okay, so the story of this game is very simple. What's that noise? How did you do that? You can't just play the Nintendo Switch Online NES port of the game! You're not getting the full experience! You fence! Okay, I didn't think I needed to clarify this, but I guess I will. so if I didn't make my computer literacy apparent enough earlier from that disclaimer, I'm not too big on emulators yet, and how it stands currently, I don't want to risk giving my laptop 20 STDs just to play a rare version of an arcade game just to get the quote-unquote full experience. Even though, let's be real, I don't think one level is really going to change my opinion on this game very much. I'll seek out emulation when I absolutely need to, but if I already have a version of the game available to play on an official console, or if you're willing to just go buy me a full-on Donkey Kong arcade cabinet, I'm just gonna play it that way. That's just how I roll. Okay, well, I'll just buy you one! Well, that's annoying. Anyways, the story of the game is very simple. You play as an official DK arcade console! Game wasn't specific. Sorry. You could at least fix the wall, asshole! Anyways, so the story of this game is very simple. You play as Mario Jumpman, and you rescue a lady named Paul Lady from the clutches of Donkey Kong? Ah, okay. And to do this, you have to do, what else? Jump and climb and walk across precarious levels to get to her and save her. Pretty simple stuff, but obviously this was the early 80s after all. That being said, this is one of the earliest games to feature cutscenes, which is pretty cool, even if it is just at the beginning. Of course, what the game lacks in narrative, it makes up for in gameplay. Kind of. The gameplay is your standard platforming affair, running, jumping, all the while avoiding obstacles, all that jazz. A pretty standard game in general, but still pretty revolutionary for the time. Now the game itself is spread over 4 different levels, each of which offer new challenges involving platforming with new gimmicks in each one. Though it is worth noting that in the original arcade version, the levels were done out of order, and you had to repeat levels. Obviously, because this was an arcade game with no real ending, this was to be expected, but with the NES version it's much more streamlined, so I'll be using that for reference. The first stage tests your basic jumping ability as DK throws barrels at you while also introducing you to the hammer. The next stage, typically the Pie Factory, that unfortunately isn't in the NES version, as established earlier, has conveyor belts and these sliding ladder things. The third stage has vertically moving platforms, the sprint you have to avoid, and also introduces you to these collectibles that are really only there to boost your points. And the fourth and final stage has you walking over these bolts, causing them to disappear, which causes the top platform that Donkey Kong is standing over to fall, defeating him. All the while, these fire boys are to be avoided, which can be pretty tough, because I swear these things actively know where you are, even going out of their way to avoid you if you have the hammer on you. So, yeah, if you're playing the way I did, this game is extremely short, clocking in around 5 to 8 minutes, depending on your skill level. But that doesn't mean the game isn't hard. If anything, I'll say the NES version kind of neutered a lot of the sheer difficulty of the original arcade version, but it still does hold true to some extent, with that being said. Now, this is totally fine on its own, obviously, but there are a few problems I have with this along with other aspects of the game's design. Firstly, Mario's movements feel kind of odd in this game. It's nothing bad, but there's this weird sort of jump movement where when he lands after a jump, he stops for like a second before being able to move again. Now, this is fine in every other level, except for the first one, purely because of how fast it moves, where you almost need to be constantly jumping to avoid barrels, and that half second can leave you pretty vulnerable to another barrel. And speaking of the first stage, the way the barrels move can be pretty jarring, like how you can never really tell if a barrel, when coming up to a ladder, will roll past it or down it, which can lead to a lot of second-guessing moments or near misses. Also, at one point, DK just yeets a barrel out of nowhere, which can pretty bad if you're in the crossfire. Also, this could just be me, but I've never really been a fan of how the hammers work in this game. They're supposed to be limited invincibility power-ups, that I can understand, but you can't jump with them, which kind of leaves you stranded a lot of the time. Especially like what I mentioned earlier, about how the fire boys avoid you. And when you're on a tiny platform like this, the hammer becomes kind of useless. And on a minor note, the hit detection on the hammer becomes kind of whack at times too. Oh, and yeah, I don't know if this is just the NES version's doing, but this game also has fall damage! Yeah, you know, that thing that everyone complains Bubsy did later.
They put falling damage in their motherfucking 2D platform game?
Yeah, well, Mario was doing it before it was annoying. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this, especially with how slow the platforms move in the NES version. Still though, despite my gripes with this first Mario outing, I still enjoyed my time with this game. The platforming can be fun and reasonably challenging, and the overall level progression and game design is still pretty good. Overall, it's a classic for a reason, and not a bad start for one of the most iconic fictional characters ever. I'd give it a 7.3 out of 10. It's okay. Oh yeah, there's also a Game B on the NES version. I'm told this is like a sped up version, but honestly, I couldn't even distinguish it from the really good game. After the success of the first Donkey Kong, as well as a bajillion ports of the game, and even a prequel Game & Watch game that some people believe hold darker implications for Mario as a character, a lot of discussion was given to what the sequel would be. It was then decided that, in keeping with the spirit of the original King Kong, the follow-up would be about the titular ape's son, and thus, we got Donkey Kong Jr. So in this game, you play as the titular DKJR in all his freakishly large bottom-lipped glory, as you try to rescue your father, DKSR, from the clutches of Mario, who's actually called Mario this time, and presumably his clone, as established in the arcade opening, apparently before he was painted green. Now, DK Jr. takes a bit of a different approach from the first DK game. The levels still work on a vertical trajectory, but unlike in the previous game, where emphasis was put on jumping and occasional climbing to avoid obstacles and reach the top, because basically, you're a monkey, in this game, a higher emphasis is put on climbing and occasional jumping. And this game takes pretty good advantage of that through its level design, both with how the enemies operate and things like these fruits you can knock down that earn you more points if enemies are hit by them, which is pretty neat. Much like the first DK game, this game is spread over 4 levels. The first is your standard introduction to climbing and fruit functionalities. The second level, that sounds like a printer, introduces these enemies called nitpickers who fly in straight lines at differing heights. The third level, Mario's Fortress, which he suddenly has now, I guess, that also plays this absolute banger, has these electric balls that you have to jump over to avoid that progressively get faster with each platform the higher up you go, and the fourth level, which has you climbing up to push keys into these slots, all the while avoiding more YouTube reviewers to free your dad, suddenly gain extreme levels of muscle mass, and win the game. Wait. Surprisingly enough, I found myself enjoying this game a lot more than the first Donkey Kong. Sure, there's still fall damage, and it's kind of annoying. This spring in level 2 can be kind of a hassle in getting the proper jump mileage out of it, and also, this. But yeah, other than that, this game's just solid. The level design's better, the game feels more fair but still offers a decent amount of challenge, the controls feel better. It's just overall an extremely good game. 8.3 out of 10, it's very good. I'm actually kind of shocked. Oh, and just to further show how I think this game's an improvement over the first DK game, they have a Game B like the last one, but not only do they add an extra enemy this time, meaning I could actually notice what was different about Game B when compared to Game A, but it also is more in line with the difficulty of the original arcade version. I don't know. I just think that's cool.